Good morning, everyone. I am here with Dr. Timo again, and we've got a really important subject to talk about. Now, this is going to be the first of a two-part series of videos. The first one we're doing this week, the next one we will release next week. And we'll also be putting this together into a little course for people as well with some extra information, because this is absolutely crucial to every dog and cat owner. And what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about how to read the label of the food that you're buying for your dog and cat, because there's so much misinformation about this. And this can be the difference between you making healthy choices for your animal or inadvertently, through no fault of your own, making some really bad choices from your animal. So before we launch into it, Timo, how are you today and why is this so important for you?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing fine. So it's super important because the labels are designed, or let's say regulated, by the food producers themselves, right? So they create a framework, and then, of course, there are some professors giving input, but they actually decide what's on it, what's not on it. And what's on it is normally not the problem, but what's not on it is actually very important, because it's built so that some things can be hidden, and it can also mislead you. So I decided to do it with you so we can really show how to read the labels, what to understand from it, what it actually means, and what has to be declared, what not is not declared, and how to understand the quality of the food just by reading the ingredients and the constituents. So that will give you the power to choose the food. Not important which price point, it will let you know what you're buying actually with your money. And if you want to avoid certain things, how to fish them out from the label, from the whole thing, thousands of words, how to just fish them out so you know that what to avoid.
This is so important because, you know, I've been an animal parent for more years than I care to admit to. And I still get confused by things, and I still have to call Timo up and sort of say, what about this? What about that? Because marketing can be very, very clever, and it can be used like everything we've been talking about in this world that we're faced with today. Things can be used for the good, or they can be used to mislead. And what's really important is today we're going to be going through some examples, and we're not picking on any particular companies. We just wanted to give some examples of what's on different types of labels and what you should be looking out for. But it is very important that anytime we're buying something that's ready-made meal, either for ourselves or for our animals, there's always a cost associated with that, because the companies that are selling these have got to package them, they've got to manufacture them, they've got to transport them, etc., 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 test them. So there's a lot of on cost for those companies. So that's why often there can be some sacrifices between quality and the product, because they've got, you know, everyone wants something for a certain price, and quality costs money. So we'll be talking about that as we go through. So Timo, before, your dog behind you is gorgeous, by the way. That's a lovely,
that's a very funny guy.
Really cute dog. So I must get my green screen set up because I've got some lovely pictures. But let's get on to the slide set and let's start talking through some details for people.
Yeah, let's start. Let me share my screen with you. Let's see shortly. Oop. All right, should be good. Oops.
That's a very pretty cat.
Yeah, it is. I love it. Yeah. So, yeah, I called it reading and understanding pet food labels because they are not both the same thing. So you can read it, but not understand it at all. So let's start with this one. Please, I wanted to share some images the way you would look at them. It's we can make also very pretty images, but that's not the point of the course. So here you see that there is something called the guaranteed analysis, which means you get what you see on it, right? That's not actually right, because even the guaranteed analysis is true. They have 10% of leeway to go up or down with any of these. So it's guaranteed within that 10%. And that changes a lot, actually, especially if you look at energy. If you get instead of 4,000 calories, so 3,600 calories. That's a huge difference. But it's okay. So let's start.
Sorry, I'm going to ask some questions from the user's point of view. So this is a bag of dried food, isn't it?
Yeah.
What we would often call
for cats.
kibble for cats.
Yeah.
And as I said, a lot of people expect to be told exactly what's in their animal's bowl. And if we think about how ridiculous that is really, because if you go to a tree and pick an apple, or if you go and catch a rabbit and eat a rabbit, every rabbit is going to have variation in body weight, in constitution, so is every animal. So as soon as we're buying something that's giving us this guaranteed analysis, to me, that would raise alarm bells. So carry on.
That is correct. But to credit of this company, they have this note formulated for rotational feeding. Yeah. So that's actually very positive. So they already tell you have to use different flavors or brands to fulfill all the needs. Although this food fulfills all the needs according to the guidelines, right? But the guidelines, as I say, it's not really set on stone because the guidelines are estimation. Nobody can know exactly who needs what in what amount. It's impossible. So they can only just see which animals are getting sick from what deficiency and what excess. But there is no real 100% truth in it, okay? So
when we're talking about the guidelines, guys, we're talking about the standards, the industry body standards, which are different in different countries.
That is correct.
We're going to come on and talk about that in the second of this video series next week.
For instance, here it is AFCO. So this is the American Institution for the Standardization of Pet Food. And in Europe, that will be FEDIAF. In every country, different places, they have different regulations and they have different guidelines from energy till amount of protein and everything. So now I want to share with you, the very first thing I want to talk about is the misleading of percentages. So including Catherine and everyone around me who wants to feed their animals well are always confused about these percentages, because the percentages do not tell you what's inside in grams or how much it covers the need of your animal if you don't know the percentage of the moisture inside. So when your vet tells you your dog needs 8% protein, that's just the word. Normally, so let's say 18% protein, and you read here it's 32. You might think, but it's double as much, right? But maybe the food that your vet was talking about had 70% moisture, and this one has just 20. And then suddenly the percentage of protein changes in grams according to what the dog eats, because there is less moisture. Does it make sense?
Yes, because obviously in nature, we'd be eating whole living things, whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal. And roughly speaking, whether you're a plant or whether you're an animal, you're roughly 70% water.
That is correct. Now, like some fruits, of course, they are like 90-95%.
Yeah, some are a lot more and things. But, you know, we are a lot of water in terms of any living organism, any living plant.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when you're packaging foods up to sell them, a lot of people either don't want to pay for moisture, or the moisture needs to be removed to keep it from decaying, etc. So if we see on this one, I think I can just about read that it's like 9% moisture.
That is correct.
So that's obviously very unrepresentative of a diet that an animal would normally eat.
That is correct. So if you triple this amount, because if you triple this, you are around 70% water, 65-70%, then you will get to the right amount of protein. In this case, that would be around 11 or 12, right?
So that means 3,
yeah. But because, okay, so let's say I have a glass of water, right? And the glass of water, if it's 200 milliliters of water, and I put one tablet of calcium inside, I have, let's say, 1% calcium. If I double the water, now I have half percent calcium. I have the same amount of calcium. It didn't change. It's just the percentage change. That means the percentage doesn't tell you anything of how much you are getting what. You have to calculate it according to the moisture. And for that, you have to know the needs of your animal. So if you have to understand what your dog needs. Your dog doesn't need 11% protein. It needs certain amount of protein. And if you know that, you can choose your food accordingly, or you can change the amount accordingly. But we will come back to the protein-fat ratio again, because that has a huge impact on it. So it doesn't look very sophisticated. I'm sorry for that. But so it's actually actual needs versus percentages on the labels. So I want to show you here what actually a dog or cat needs according to their body weight instead of percentages you read, right? A dog for 1 kilogram body weight needs around 6 grams of protein. This is on average. If your dog is smaller, it needs more. If dog is bigger, it needs less protein per kilogram body weight, not in total, don't forget, per kilogram body weight, because the body gets more efficient and certain things are shared in energy cost in the same amount. So if you know that your dog is 10 kilogram dog, it needs 60 grams of protein. So if your food has 30% protein according to its moisture level, or 50 or 10, doesn't matter at all, because what you need is 60 grams of protein. So you take the food, you look at the label. If it says in 100 grams, I have 30 grams of protein, then you know that you have to give 200 grams of food to cover the protein. That's it. There is no, you don't have to calculate anything else. You just have to know how much protein does my dog or cat need, because this is the most important ingredient, or let's say constituent, right? Now there's a catch, and the catch is the rest. What is in fat and carbohydrates inside? I didn't put carbohydrates here, only fiber, because the carbohydrates are irrelevant. They are not needed. They are not essential. If you have them, though, they contribute to energy. And that's where you have to look at things more carefully. So let's say a dog needs 6 grams of protein per kilogram body weight and 3 grams of fat. As you see, fat is around the half for the dog and even less for the cat. The reason for that is fat has more than double the energy of protein per gram. So even if you have the same amount of energy, protein to fat ratio, the fat has to be the half of protein to give the same amount of energy, even less, right? So when you have 6 grams of protein and 6 grams of fat, now you are overfeeding your dog, because suddenly the energy is actually too high according to the protein level. First, you will have too much fat. It will have a negative effect on the digestion, and you will have too much energy according to the protein that has to be in. Yes?
Yeah.
Does it make sense? That's why you have to know how much your dog needs, not percentage. That doesn't make much sense. That will mislead you. The second thing is, as you can see here, the carbohydrates are not a part of this label, because the carbohydrates are never part of the label on any pet food. According to the legislation or the regulation or the guidelines, you do not have to tell how much starch you put into the food. So if you have any type of pet food, you have starch in it. If it's dry food, for sure. Not air dried, I don't want to put them in. And some of the pressed dried foods also doesn't have it. But normal kibble has to have starch to create the kibble. No starch, no kibble. But you are never going to see the amount of starch in the constituents. So to find out how much that is, you have to do rough calculations. So you have to check how much calories are in that food. How many calories, not how much, sir. How many calories are in that package per 100 gram. Then you remove the percentage of protein and fat totally. So don't forget, protein has 4 kilocalories per gram and fat has 9.2. And then after you calculate the amount of energy that comes from protein and fat, you reduce it from the total energy. Then it will tell you how much starch was smuggled in to the food. And you will be surprised. Sometimes it's 30%, sometimes it's even more. So and suddenly you are looking at the food that has the right, if it has the right amount of protein, it's too high in fat and carbohydrates. And if you give it according to the calories, then it has too much fat and carbohydrates, but not enough protein because it's reduced according to the calories. So this is what you really have to look at. So recap. Carbohydrates are not declared. You have to find out how many of them are inside according to their calories. 1 gram of carbohydrate is 4 kilocalories. And you multiply the protein amount with 4. You multiply the fat with 9. And this total will give you the calorie that comes from protein and fat. And if you reduce it or substitute it from the total energy, you will come up with how many carbohydrates are inside. And that's super important for you to know, because you don't want your dog or cat eating that amount of carbohydrates, right?
And also, I'll just add to that, because obviously, as you'll have seen from the previous videos, and we cover this in our dog and cat nutrition courses in a lot of detail, if your dog or cat is not getting sufficient protein, then there's going to be serious health repercussions for that. So
that is correct. So let's make a rough calculation here. The crude protein is 32% on this picture, and the crude fat is 17. This is actually quite a good ratio for cat. Not bad at all. Not perfect, but very close to. So I cannot say very bad things about this food in composition according to the fat and protein. So then there is fiber. Don't forget, fiber is also carbohydrates. So we cover now 4% of the carbohydrates inside, but fiber doesn't create any energy, right? So that means the 4% are fibers that don't create any energy. And then we have moisture, which is like 9%. So 32 plus 17 is 49. Plus 4 is 53. Plus 9 is 62. And plus 7 is 69. So we have 31% carbohydrates, energy yielding carbohydrates, like starch, in this food. If you also add the fiber to it, 4%, we have 35% carbohydrates in this food, which no cat needs ever.
In fact, not only does it not need, but it can be very helpful.
Yeah. But again, to create dry food like this, extruded food, kibble food, without it, you cannot create it. So you need it.
Yeah.
Some pet foods go with the minimum amount they can go away with, because they just want to make the form. They want to give the best quality. So they are high quality kibble.
Yeah.
And the mid-level kibble is like around 30%. And then low-level kibble is just going really high up. And they will try everything they can to show you on internet everywhere that dogs and cats are good at digesting carbohydrates. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they are not talking about what's optimum. They say how they survive, but this is not thriving. This is for surviving. So let's go to other things. This is from Rocketo, the company I'm still associated with.
And me.
Yeah, and still not perfect. So here you have the ingredients list from where it comes from, and we can see that organic. We just get rid of the organic part. We just think about beef, meat, muscle meat is 62%. Liver, very important, 10%. We are at 72%. And then the rest is the 28%, right? And since this is dehydrated and only 8% of water, you can see that 20% of it comes from seeds, yeast, apple cubes, coconut flakes, and a lot of fiber inside. And let's check how much fiber is inside. Then we can see how many carbohydrates is inside, right? So it says total carbohydrates 6.4%. So and fiber is 12%. So how is this possible? Because here the carbohydrates and the fiber are calculated separately. But if you put everything together, you have 70% here. Yeah, moisture is 6.9%, 7% on this analysis because every bag is different. Then you have 77, 13% left, right? So, and you have 3.8% ash. So that's bang on. Crude fiber is this calculation doesn't match up. Okay, it doesn't.
Check that, because I think it does.
Okay, let's recheck. So you have 70% here in total, right? 70%, 35 plus 35. 12.8% is 82%, 83, plus 6.5.
Yeah, that adds up to 100% exactly.
That is correct, but fibers are carbohydrates.
Yeah, they're talking about the different types of
that is correct. So if you look at it,
yeah,
if you look at it, you have to know that the total carbohydrates are the fiber plus the carbohydrates they are saying. And it's not just 6%, right? But the 6.5% is the one that brings the energy.
Yeah.
Right. So the half of the energy comes from protein and percentage. But in energy percentage, 1/4 of the energy comes from protein, because you have the same amount of fat, which has double amount of energy. Yeah. So this is now how you calculate it. And here you can see how the percentages change if you add water to it to serve like it would be a normal animal. And suddenly you have 70% moisture and almost 12% protein. Now it sounds totally different, right? Yeah. So let's go to this one. Now suddenly you see that the percentages change. One is 34, one is 21, one is 12. How is this even possible? It's possible because they have different levels of moisture.
Is this a dried food you're talking about?
This is also dried food, yeah, but this has 11% moisture.
Yeah.
So because it has 11% moisture, the protein and fat change accordingly.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I try to tell here. So the percentage doesn't say anything to you directly, because you have to always calculate according to the moisture level. That's a bit of a more complicated calculation. So try to figure out how much protein your dog or cat needs and calculate accordingly. It's far better calculation. It's bulletproof, and it will always give you the right amount of food, no matter what.
So this is why when all these problems come into being, because we're altering the format of a food away from the natural format. So when people are feeding, a whole animal, so to speak, obviously that's as nature intended, but for storage, for preservation, for all sorts of reasons, for convenience buying, you're taking the natural formula of the food and changing it dramatically into processed, and that makes it very complicated for people to understand, doesn't it?
That is correct. And again, because there is no standard in how much moisture you have to have in the food to call it dry, suddenly this 3% difference make the protein look far less in this food than the other one, which is 34, although they have the same amount in total. If you look at it, very, very similar amounts of protein.
Yeah,
but the percent
misleading.
Yeah. So when the vet tells you, you have these 3 packs in your hand, let's say, one has 11%, one has 34, one has 21. And the vet tells you, you need maximum 8% of fat. So you look at one, has 34% of fat. You would never touch it. And then the other one is 13% of fat. It's closer. But actually, the one that was 34% of fat, when you calculate it with the water, then it becomes 10% fat. So it's, that's why the percentages really don't really make any sense according to what's in the bag. So,
but can I just also add, for a normal user as well, this is why if you're feeding dried food that isn't rehydrated before you feed it, you are causing your pet a lot of stress on their system, because no animal is designed to eat food that's had all the moisture taken out. So some of the companies, their foods are designed to have the water added back in before you feed them to make them a more natural format. But the dried kibbles and biscuits are not, and therein you're inherently putting some strain on your animal system by eating something that's that low in moisture.
That is correct. And thinking that your dog should drink extra after eating that
Makes me
extra dry food
thirsty.
is not a bad how do you say it, suggestion to make it happen, but it doesn't really work like that, because the food, when it comes into the stomach or in the mouth, has a signaling quality that signals there is this much of this. Prepare yourself for this amount of protein, and when it's not moist, the signaling goes away. It doesn't happen. So what only happens is the tongue of the dog or cat sees the free amino acids and the fat and reacts to it, but it doesn't know anything about what else is inside or what the constituents are, because it's misleading.
And it
right?
can also be dangerous for dogs in particular to drink large quantities of water after eating a dry food, because then the food can swell in the stomach and cause issues.
Yeah, and it also swells in the colon. That means it swells so much in the colon, especially for big dogs. You can check like Great Danes, although they're not from Denmark, but let's say. And that type of dogs, or the Irish wolf dog, which wolfhound, I really love that dog. They have huge feces laying around that is so swollen. You would think, is this from a cow? You know, it's because that amount of water cannot be processed as quickly. And it's just not a very good way to feed the animals around you. Okay, so another misleading thing is that how the labels are telling you what they actually are and what they actually claim to be, right? So this is the vegan food. I don't want to make their lives harder. They try to be doing something different, and they're vegan food from the UK. And no GMO, no wheat, no soya, no fillers, no additives, no preservatives, no artificial colors or flavors, and of course, no meat. All right. So no GMO, it's not so hard. No wheat, okay. No soya, okay. No fillers. That's hard, but okay, let's say okay. And no additives. All right, so we read it. This is no additives. Their internet site. I didn't create this myself. So we go check the real label then, the constituents. Oh my God, nutritional additives. He's here. Now we have additives here suddenly. And why is that? So I thought there are no additives and nutritional additives, because now they are nutritional additives. So the name nutritional changes everything. But before, you thought that there is nothing added inside. And now you go, oh, what's added? Vitamin A, vitamin D3, vitamin E, L-carnitine, taurine, methionines. And the reason why these have to be added is because there is no meat in it. So if you want to feed a carnivore with non-meat, all these have to be added because they are only in animal bodies. And these are none of these come from animals. That means they're all laboratory made.
And we did do a separate video that you will find under the Vital Animal Team series on the YouTube about the difference between synthetic and natural vitamins and minerals. And it's a really important video for people to go and listen to.
That is correct. Some of these things can be fermented.
Yeah.
But it's more expensive. So I'm not sure if they're buying the most expensive additive they can have for a mid-level food. But okay, so you will see that the claims of we have this, we have the best of this, we did this, the perfect food for your dog and this, it can be all misleading. Let's go to this one. I try to find one that is also very interesting. Here, this is frozen dog and cat food, right? So,
and there in itself, there's not many that sell them as a frozen food that's nutritionally suitable for dogs and cats, because obviously they do have some difference in the needs. So this is one that does market itself for both dogs and cats to be fed this exact formula. Okay,
so the label claims that Nutriment's Leo and Wolf range of raw frozen meatball products deliver high quality nutrition alongside a novel eating experience for your dog. Then we look inside. It has beef meat, 99%, and 1% vegetable fiber. So this is the novel solution, right? Super new. So you give meat. And you add 1% of fiber. We don't know what fiber it is. It's vegetable fiber, gained from pea, something, maybe soy husk, can be anything, and we don't know anything about it, right? It's the fiber only. So the problem is that the beef meat, if it's not organic, it's already full of nasties. But let's say even if it's organic or free range of highest quality, it's deficient of vitamin D, calcium, silica, many things. So this food doesn't cover everything. And most of the things that are needed in small amounts, like trace elements and some essential oils, it's not in this food. The second problem is, for cat, this is not that bad because this is high in omega-6s. But for a dog, this will cause trouble over time. It's too much beef. Right?
Yeah, and I must say, one of the reasons we put this example and said we're not picking on any particular company because they're all, trying to do some best, in the more natural form, like this one, is still a lot better in our opinion than the kid.
Yeah, for sure.
However, what people don't realize, I get told 99% of the time by my clients, and so does Timo, that, oh, it's fine, my animal's on a good diet because it's on a raw diet. And we've said in all our other videos, there's raw and there's raw. So people buy this and give them day in, day out to their animals, and they will be nutritionally deficient because it's not balanced to meet their needs.
That is correct. And you will not find it out immediately because okay, so one truth that you should know for humans and animals alike, and when you are in your mother's belly, when the babies, the puppies are in their mother, they absorb a lot of minerals. That's enough for them to grow up to become an adult. So all these important trace elements are already in their body to grow fast and quick and good. So when a dog doesn't show immediate deficiency, it doesn't mean the food is good. It means the mother delivered everything already. But if you don't feel the diminishing storage all the time, once they're like 3 years old, they start to show extreme deficiencies. And you think, what happened now? It didn't happen now. It was happening the last 3 years. It's just you didn't realize it.
Yeah, so
right?
by the time a problem becomes visible to you as the pet parent as a physical symptom, that problem has been building up within the body for a long while.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah.
That is correct. And this is, for instance, good. If this company would say, okay, we are giving this to you, you have to add this to make this food complete, I would love it. Not a bad idea at all. You would just, although I don't like the 1% fiber in it because it's not enough for a dog. It's enough for a cat, but not for a dog. But at least I would say, all right. So if this food comes with the disclaimer, combine it with this, even if it's their own product, that would be such much better label. Right? Yeah. But this label is misleading you because there is nothing new about feeding your dog with only meat or cat. And this is just beef. So, and beef meat is not very rich. Enriched in some things, but not most of it. And it doesn't have enough taurine, by the way, for your dog or cat to function because that's mostly in the organ meat, not in the muscle meat. So it's misleading. All right. Let's come to this. By the way, none of the foods we looked at, there are like 5 or 6, none of them have the same amount of moisture till now. So all percentages are totally misaligned from each other because the moisture is different. This one, the last one had 61, and this one has 65. And then protein suddenly dropped to 15%. And you would think, wow, this has far less protein, but it has far more water. That's why it sounds far less. But the problem here is it has even more fat than it has protein. And that's a dangerous thing. And the funny thing is, normally, lamb is a lean meat. So how come raw lamb has so much fat in it? It has to come from somewhere. And where is that? we have to check, oh, Scottish salmon oil. So Scottish salmon oil is inside to make up for this extra fat that is inside. Because the lamb has a typical fat amount between 5 and 7% of its body weight and a very similar moisture level.
But of course, it will depend on how that lamb's been raised, because the more intensively they're farmed, unfortunately, the higher the fat ratio.
That is correct, but you would never reach the same protein and fat. It's impossible. That means the lamb couldn't move at all. It just has to be a fat ball.
Or they're using the parts of the meat that
are fatty, like the
are fatty, and they're taking some of the good quality lamb perhaps to go into the human meat source. But
that is correct.
It's a very unnaturally balanced, particularly since it's mixed with chicken. So it's virtually half lamb and half chicken, which equally shouldn't be high in fat.
Look, a woman that is functional has around 18% body fat, right? And but that doesn't mean that that all this fat would be eaten by the animal if they eat something. So when they hunt an animal, they are not eating anything fatty first. What they want to have is the highest quality protein and minerals and vitamins. It's the heart, it's the liver, right? It's the kidney, it's the how do you say it? Oh, my English is getting worse. Spleen, right? These are the things that are full of nutrients, not the fatty parts. So fat is just, they need like 7% of the food should be around fat, 7, 8, maximum 10. But that's about it at 65% moisture, that is. Right? Again, we go back always to the grams, That's why don't let people mislead you when they say, oh, your dog has pancreatitis. You cannot have more than 8% fat in your food. According to what moisture? So what's the percentage of what? That's a huge thing. So find out what your vet is telling you. Ask them to tell you in grams. And if they have trouble with telling you in grams, they don't know their game. So go to another vet. And if they can tell you in grams, then follow that gram according to food you get or cook or prepare yourself. But don't think that a food that is 11% moisture and 65% moisture have the same amount of fat inside. You cannot. It's not possible. So you have to calculate accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any question, Catherine?
I think what we're going to do in the video next week, we'll be talking about, so we haven't mentioned the quality of the ingredients today. We're purely looking at why people get so confused, myself included, with labels. Yeah. And, what I would say is a lot of these companies are really trying to do their best. They're meeting a demand for convenience foods for animals, but whether it's for yourself or for your pets, you are going to normally compromise balance and quality if you're expecting someone else to produce it for you as cost effectively as you can produce it yourself. Because unfortunately, in real life, that doesn't happen. Any company that's having to pre-prepare foods of whatever format has a huge amount of overheads to get that food to the consumer. And therefore, you will either be paying for it by premium cost foods, if you want the convenience, or if you're not paying a lot more than it costs you to produce it yourself, you're compromising on quality.
For sure.
And that's a fact of life, and you can't get away from it. So if you're expecting to get a ready prepared, good quality food for the same amount that you could prepare it yourself, that's an unrealistic expectation.
That is correct. And one more thing I want to tell about is the additives. So we talked about the macros till now because that's super important to understand, but we have mostly no real idea about the additives, right? So according to the guidelines, if you add anything that is not a part of the natural food in powder form, premixes, anything pharmaceutical supplement, you have to declare it. So sometimes calcium and phosphorus are on the label because they have an important ratio. So some of these companies will declare it to show you that they are balanced in phosphorus and calcium. Unfortunately, this company's calcium and phosphorus is not balanced at all. They are almost the same. That means this dog or cat, whoever is eating it, and always eating this food, if it's always on this food, will face two problems: will weak bones, joint and bone problems, tooth problems, and it will have kidney stones for sure. If it's a cat, for sure. So, and also ascorbic acid, there is an asterisk on it because it is not essential for dogs or cats to get the vitamin C from outside because they produce it themselves, or let's say their microbiome produces it. And vitamin E is guaranteed at 400 international units per kilogram. There is another problem with that, by the way. Sorry for that. There is a problem with international units and milligrams. So every vitamin that has an international unit has its own international unit. That means vitamin E can be 25 milligrams per international unit, and vitamin D could be 15 milligrams per international unit. So it's not like a direct conversion. You cannot convert every international unit to milligrams the same way, and that's misleading, right? That's why it's always better to know how much your dog or cat needs in international units, so you can read it directly and then understand. But still, it's per kilogram. That means per kilogram food, not per 100 gram. Mm. Yeah, this is actually 40 international units per 100 gram. And suddenly it's far less, isn't it? Because everything else is here per 100. This is the only one that's per 1,000 with the ascorbic acid. You see, this is a problem. So this is misleading. But they can get away from it because it's within the guidelines. All right. So let's check something else. Here you will see that they declared the omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids inside the food. And this is also a bit misleading because this is a highly processed food that had heat treatment over 120 degrees, up to 165 degrees, which these omega-3 fatty acids are totally broken and oxidized. So they are no use for you. So even if your dog and cat eats this, the omega-3 fatty acids can be burned for energy, but cannot be used structurally, right? And it can cause cancer, other problems, joint inflammation, constant inflammation, systemic inflammation, allergies, and whatnot. So this is another thing. Look, they also added a certain type of bacteria to increase a lot of it, by the way, billion, for populating the gut flora, which is a bad thing because the gut flora needs for a cat around 8,000 different bacteria and all that stuff. And there is only one that's going to dominate because in big amount. So another thing you have to look, you see here all the supplements inside: manganese, calcium, pyridoxine, sodium sulfonate, and all the things. Why do they declare it? Because they have to. None of this is natural. So all of these coming from a powder, premix, made some laboratory, because if it's in natural form in food, they don't have to declare it.
And they can't declare it because, of course, as we've said before, every chicken will have a different level. Every spinach leaf will have a different. So if you start to see these listed there, you immediately know, as we said in our other video, that these are artificial synthetic additives.
Yeah.
Will not be recognized by the body and do the same function as their natural counterparts.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, some of them do partly, like the vitamin D3 here would do the job, but the rest is highly useless. Yeah. Okay. So any more questions?
I think one of the other things is when you get those high number of additives, a lot of product recalls are to do with these premixes of the vitamin and mineral premixes actually having radically different levels than what's declared, which can be highly dangerous.
That is correct. With the vitamin D and the heels, I remember this was a big problem. And yeah, it can happen to anyone. The problem is if you have one handful of white powder to add 1 kilogram of mixture of food, there are so many things can go wrong. So because you cannot see what's this powder, how is it built? You cannot know that. The guys at Hills didn't know that they have 10 times more vitamin D than they should have in this premix they are putting in tons every day. So somebody messed up the mixture, and it is not good for the body anyway, and it caused huge problem. So final thing I want to tell about additives here is, we are going again to the vegan food here, is that selenium and sodium selenide, although we will cover these next time with the next course because this is important, but you will see that selenium as sodium selenide is highly useless, like useless, totally useless and harmful in total. If you look at the disadvantages, they have more disadvantages than advantages. And you see that this food tells you that they are organic or they are vegan, super friendly to the planet and super good and everything. Then they use sodium selenide as something that will harm your animal's body instead of giving it in a natural form. But because they want to feed vegan, and by the way, don't misunderstand me, Catherine and I, we are both vegan. So it's not like we are bashing vegan lifestyle or something. But a dog is not, or a cat is not. So if you want to feed them, you have to add all these things that are not natural into their healthy food. And it's a big problem.
Brilliant. So if you'd like to not share your screen, Timo, and I will just finish off by showing people where they can find more information.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the first in the series of how to read the labels, and I'm not surprised if some of you are thinking, my goodness, this is even more confusing than I thought originally, and that is the reality of the situation. So what I do want to draw your attention to is nature always knows best. So if you go to the website catherineedwardsacademy.com and scroll down, you will find 2 of the courses, more coming soon, that Timo and I have put together. An introduction to home prepared raw and cooked food for your cats, and a same one for your dogs. Now, really, the titles, we probably ought to read you the titles, because not only do these tell you all you need to know for what you're looking out for, whether you're making your own food yourself or whether you're buying in another one, but they also give a good do and don't list of recipes, and also tell you how to home prepare yourself for maximum control and safety and balance. So please do have a look at those, because I think the more we look into what's commercially available, we can see there's some compromises. And what lots of people do, Timo, myself included, is they'll use a combination, because we're not aiming for perfection. You know, none of us can eat a perfect diet every day of the year. So
nobody can.
I use a combination. So I home prepare some of my cats and dogs' foods, and then I also have some good quality pre-bought ones in, so that, for example, if my husband's feeding, or if I'm out for the day and one of my neighbors or animal sitters is feeding. So you're looking to do the best you can, but the more you understand about what you're buying, the better decisions you can make for your pets.
100%. I agree.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Timo. We will be back next week for the second part of this series, where we will be looking in detail about what the industry standards are and the pros and cons of that, and also how to look in more detail about the actual quality of the ingredients that are in the food. So thank you all very much. Hope you've enjoyed this.